So, good morning. You want to use your own laptop?
No, I keep black.
Okay. Oh, you move it. Okay, I want to. Hey, yeah, I'm gonna go live. YouTube.
Good morning, His Excellencies, distinguished scholars, ladies and gentlemen. I hope I got the protocol correct, madam. Good morning. Yeah, that's better. My name is Frank Lekaba. I'm going to be moderating our today's talk on one of the most timely and important talk in reflecting the developments in the continent around leadership and governance. And I'll be facilitating this session from now until 1 o'clock. And I promise by 1 o'clock we'll be done. I'm not a dictator, but I'm one of the strict moderators. So if you want to ask a question, we'll keep it to a question. If you want to make a comment, we'll make it a comment. So I would prefer that we already now, I suppose already, we have our comments and our questions already before, because the blurb was distributed with the program. So please revise the questions. If the question is clumped up together with the comment, try to separate the two. The question, let it be on the side, and let the comment be on the side. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I think you saw a blurb of today's topic, and you saw even the prestigious scholar that is going to be delivering the topic for us. But I thought, before I can hand over to the formalities and give over to Prof. Edith to formally open, just tease our minds. Reports that I always quote in a discussion of this nature. One report that I'm always interested in is the Mo Ibrahim Governance Index. And then the second one that I'm also interested in is, there are two of them. One is the VDEM report on the state of democracy. The other one is the Economist Intelligence Report. Although these reports, to a certain extent, give us a sense of the state of governance in the continent and the state of democracy in the continent, in the world, of course, it is incumbent on us to further interrogate this picture, to disaggregate what is fact and what is not fact from the pictures that we get from these reports. But important to note that the 2024 governance report from the Mo Ibrahim Foundation indicates that from 2014 until 2023, that is a space of 9 or 10 years, governance flatlined at 49.3% in the continent. That is the state of governance in the continent. From 2013 to 2023, governance flatlined. What does that tell us? It tells us that we need to interrogate our systems, but most importantly, we need to interrogate leadership. We need to interrogate leadership from a perspective of leaders and leadership from perspective of institutions in the continent. Because when we talk of governance, we also talk of institutions and leaders themselves. And then the democracy report indicates that almost 60% of the countries in the continent are ranked below what we call hybrid regimes and authoritarianism. And we only have about 8 flawed democracies in the continent and 1 full democracy. But half of the continent experiences authoritarianism. So juxtapose authoritarianism and this appalling state of governance in the continent. And then tell me what are likely to be the outcomes. And how do we then think of our systems in the continent in order to address this challenge of governance and leadership in the continent? And interestingly, the 2023 report of the Democracy Index was talking about liberal democracy, the crisis of liberal democracy. And I think, interestingly, that is coming from the Economist Intelligence itself, where liberal democracy has been touted as one of the best modes of democracy in the world and one of the best models of democracy in the world. But coming from the Economist Intelligence itself to indicate that there seems to be a crisis with liberal democracy, then also makes us to reflect on what do we think of this democracy in the continent. And I think today, Prof. Falola will help us to lead us in that discussion of thinking about governance, thinking about the state of democracy in the continent, and thinking about leadership in the continent, in order to renew the continent from this malaise of stagnation of governance and democratization. So that is my kind of scene setting. I was setting the scene. I was kind of getting us into the spirit of engaging today. And to open for us to be legally engaging on what I have said here, I'm going to call our Dean, Prof. Edith Paswani, to come and do the opening and welcome address to all of you. Prof. Paswani, the floor is yours, ma'am.
Members of the International Advisory Board, led here by Professor Toyin Falola, colleagues, and also let me also acknowledge the presence of our members of the Diplomatic Corps present this morning. Your Excellencies, you're welcome. Let me also acknowledge colleagues, our students, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Good morning online as well, in your different capacities and portfolios. And I know we are joined by a large group online internationally. And I just want to say good morning to everyone. Program Director, Professor Frank Lekaba. I also want to pay my homage to you and to the excellent framing that you did this morning. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to this important seminar on leadership and governance for Africa's renewal, reclaiming agency, ethical leadership, and transformative governance in the 21st century. We gather at a defining moment in Africa's history. The continent stands at the intersection of extraordinary opportunity and unprecedented complexities. We are also navigating a rapidly changing global order characterized by shifting geopolitical power, technological disruption, driven by artificial intelligence and digitalization, demographic transitions, economic uncertainty, and evolving security challenges. And these transformations demand a new generation of leaders. Leaders who are not only technically competent, but ethically grounded, intellectually courageous, and leaders who will be committed to the public good. Our future as Africans will not be determined solely by the resources we have beneath our soil, because I think this is something that we always tell people, this is what we have, we are mineral rich. But the quality of our leadership and strength of our institutions demands attention as Africans. And what we should be asking ourselves is whether we can respond to these challenges and whether we are prepared also to reimagine governance in ways that place agency, in particular African agency and aspirations at the center of our development trajectory. The concept of reclaiming agency is particularly significant, and I want to thank the chair, because for too long, narratives about Africa have been shaped by external voices and external prescriptions. Africa's renewal requires that we also become producers, manufacturers, not merely people who can consume other people's ideas, policy solutions, and governance models, as we have been doing in the past. This concept of reclaiming agency also call upon us to draw confidently from our own intellectual traditions, our diverse experiences as Africans, our rich philosophical heritage, while engaging constructively with global knowledge. And I think we have, and I believe, as Africans, we have a rich intellectual traditions, and that needs to be strengthened. Equally important is the imperative of ethical leadership. Across the continent, citizens are calling for leadership that is accountable, that is transparent, that is visionary, and servant-oriented. It's not just ethical leadership. When we speak about it, it's not just about compliance with rules, but the whole idea of cultivating integrity, building trust, and making decisions that advance justice and dignity of our people. Sustainable development cannot be achieved without institutions that inspire confidence and leaders who place the interest of the people above personal or political gain. And the theme that Prof is talking about on transformative governance challenges us to think beyond incremental reform and advise us to imagine governance systems that are innovative and capable of responding to the complex realities of the 21st century. As the Thabo Mbeki African School of Public and International Affairs, we believe that universities have a profound responsibility to contribute to these conversations. And we are not merely an institution of teaching and research, We are conveners of critical dialogue, producers of knowledge, and partners in shaping Africa's future. Through our scholarship, our policy engagement, our leadership development, and our public discourse, we seek to contribute meaningfully to the renewal of governance across the continent. And I encourage all participants who are here today to engage openly, challenge ideas respectfully, contribute thoughtfully to the discussions. And it is through these kinds of exchanges that new knowledge is created, stronger partnerships are forged, and practical solutions begin to emerge. I also want to extend my sincere appreciation to our distinguished speaker for sharing his expertise and insights, and to all the participants for your commitment to advancing leadership and governance on our continent. The fact that you are here, it means that you are also a partner in this journey of improving leadership and governance on the continent. Because people go to places or attend seminars and talks that speaks to what is at their heart. Together, let us use this seminar to reaffirm our shared commitment to building ethical leaders, strengthening institutions, and shaping a future in which Africa does not merely respond to global change, but actively influence and leads it. I wish you a stimulating and productive seminar. Thank you. I am going to transition into the introduction, where I'll be introducing our speaker for the day, Professor Falola, who is going to be giving the lecture this morning. I have a short bio here. Toyin Falola. Professor Toyin Falola is the Jacob and Francis Sanger Musika Chair in the Humanities and University Distinguished Teaching Professor at the University of Texas at Austin. A recipient of 28 honorary doctorates, an annual conference has been named after him, TOFAC, Toyin Falola Annual Conference on Africa and the African Diaspora. The Association of Third World Studies has named its annual best book after him as the Toyin Falola Prize for the best book on Africa. He has contributed to various academic associations, once serving as the president of the African Studies Association. 3 of his memoirs have been published, and he's working on a 4th one, Fatherhood, the Relationship with My Daughter. I think this bio, maybe this is because it's called shortest bio. I know this bio is long from what I know. One of the things that he didn't mention in this bio is that he's the chair of the International Advisory Committee of the Thabo Mbeki African School of Public and International Affairs. I think it should be here in the shortest bio. We want to see our name in this shortest bio of Professor Falola in the future as well. And we are grateful to have Professor Falola with the entire team of our International Advisory Committee that are present physically here. This afternoon we will be having a meeting of the International Advisory Committee at 2 p.m. after this seminar. And I'm going to introduce to all of you some members of our advisory committee that are here. First, we have Professor Munandulo from Cornell University in the US. Prof. And then we have Professor Siva Grovoki from Johns Hopkins University in the US. We have Professor Ann Bailey from State University of New York. And these are members of our International Advisory Committee who are here for their yearly meeting and have also graced the people of South Africa with this seminar and a masterclass that took place yesterday, offered by one of the world's international protocol experts, Ms. Philippa Lawrence, with us, and she's here today. Ms. Philippa. Thank you. Just yesterday we had this training on master classes, and for 2 days, Monday and Tuesday, people graduated yesterday. We are looking forward to you joining the master class on protocol and etiquette as we prepare the next generation of leadership, because we want Africa to shine on global platform. This is the aim, and this is why this school exists. Thank you very much. Professor Falola, this is your time. Thank you.
I'm very grateful to my colleague, Professor for that brilliant introduction. And whenever people ask me for my bio, I always give them 6 lines, no more than that. Anybody whose name is not enough for him, then titles will not add to that name. I've been coming here every year since 1994. I've not missed a year. No. Sometimes 4 times. And there were moments when we had to refuel. Now you can do it direct. But even as direct, it's still 14 hours, 16 hours. But the joy of meeting my colleagues and talking to you all do override the difficulties of the trip. And I will always keep coming. And some years ago, I wrote a piece, Death on the Road. And I told my wife that if I die in Pretoria, they should just leave my body there. There's no need to move it. Because I see the place as home. I cannot count the number of lectures I've given in this country. There are so many. I'm virtually in many of their prominent universities. And I have 3 honorary doctorates from here, from the University of the Free State, from the University of Pretoria, from Northwest. So if you have been so honored, you only have to call it a home. They are not strangers to me. I'm no stranger to them. And I remain permanently grateful. I'm also a professor in 4 South African universities. A PhD student of mine is here. Of the 30 PhDs that I'm currently supervising, we call that an empire, by the way. 4 of them are here, and 1 is in this room that I've never met, and is giving me 4 terrific chapters. I will see him after this talk. It's not working. Oh, people at the back, you are not hearing me? You've not heard anything I've said? At the back? Oh, I'm so sorry, because I don't project. Okay. Shall I start all over? No, don't let me start all over. Let me just say that I have 4 PhD students on this campus, and one is in this room. I've never met him. And hopefully I will see him after this talk. The previous things you did not hear, you don't need them. And I came here for the Africa Day lecture. We've invited Thabo Mbeki to Nigeria. Actually, we invited him like 2 months ago, but he lost his sister, one of his relatives, and he could not come. He's very well loved in Nigeria. And I once nominated him with my colleagues for an award, and he came personally to receive it. And as part of our initiative under my leadership, we wrote a proposal to institute the Thabo Mbeki Award. We've done the paperwork, and we have also the paperwork to institute an award in honor of Mrs. Mbeki. And if you go on the internet and you Google Thabo Mbeki Prize, that was my initiative that we give every year to distinguished colleagues. The lecture, I sent advanced papers, but because they changed the format, I'm not sure you all will have received the advanced papers. It's over 200 pages long. It's a lot. It's a lot. But I'm authorizing the release to whoever is interested. You just contact Dino or contact Edith or contact David. And very briefly, I will just tell you, in case they miss sending you, what I sent. The first is, I frame 100 discussion questions on this topic. It's a lot of questions to encourage interaction. And when you set some of these questions, it doesn't mean I can answer them. Because the best question is usually the one that the professor himself cannot answer. So that you have new ideas coming forward. Then I sent a long bibliography for those who are interested in this topic, telling them critical books to read, and it's also a long bibliography, and I'm also authorizing its release. Then I sent concept papers, and I also sent a very long, what I call interactive learning components. And in these interactive learning components, what I did is to go practical in various ways. I authorized the release of all this for those who want to push this conversation forward. In combination, there are over 200 pages. I've been privileged to talk about, in this same building, related issues on democracy. That was the subject of a long conversation. And someone released a clip of that conversation on social media. One of the most serious issues confronting us has been the problem of leadership and governance. I don't think anybody can deny that. The acting dean released a short piece on this topic, and the president of the country released his own piece on this in relation to the continent. I also double as a policy analyst, advising people. For those of you who remember, I was part of the AU delegation to speak with government officials, including President Zuma, on some of the issues that are confronting us today. Some of these issues, people have been talking about them for a long, long time. We package them as new issues, but in actual fact, they are not new issues. 60 years after the achievement of political independence, we have continued to grapple with the challenge of institutional deficiencies, which Professor Patswana spoke about like 3 weeks ago in a short media piece. We speak about corruption. There's a major document on state capture generated in this country by a commission, and I've advanced this project of state capture further by talking about family corruption and family capture, in which we now have countries that the president leads, his wife is a minister, the daughter is the head of the central bank, and his son is the head of the family. That is not state capture. That is family capture. And we have not developed the theoretical framework to advance that project. For those of you who know the country I'm talking about, I've been part of a delegation to visit the president of the country. And let me put it on record that after 4 days, he refused to see us. And we disbanded and went back to where we come from. We talk about democratic deficits, but we should advance that further to talk about democratic recession, which is ongoing. And we talk about insecurity and underdevelopment. But to balance that is that we are blessed with abundant natural resources. There's no question about that. One of the richest continents in the world in terms of earth minerals and those other things. And we have a youthful population, one of the best demographic in the world. There's no continent with that best demographic that can match that demographic. And we have a rich intellectual tradition, which we don't talk about, but which I'm going to talk about. That intellectual tradition, if we tap into it, is far more than enough to move us forward. We have technical capacity. There's no doubt about that. But these endowments, big endowments, have not been correlated in many cases with sustainable development. But we have excellent human happiness. And we have not been able to measure this variable in terms of how, on the one hand, you highlight these deficiencies, but on the other hand, we have what I call human happiness capacity. So our challenge is not one of resources, and some people will argue that it's one of leadership and governance. And this has posed a question. Should we focus more on institutional capacity or on leadership? And some people will say the way we frame that binary is misleading. That you cannot build enduring institutions without the human agency that will construct it. That if there's no leadership, that institution will not emerge on its own. But as one of the recipients of the award of the training yesterday asked me, and I think she's here in the second row, she posed the question, what aspect of governance am I talking about? And my answer will be that we can't just frame it in terms of political power and building government positions. But we also have to frame it, as the title of this talk suggests, in terms of ethics associated with history, with culture, with memories, with ambitions of a community. Because once you begin to divorce it and you focus solely on just the locus of raw power, we are missing the point. You can't understand our continent just via constitutions. It's not possible. Because we tend not to put into our imaginations and practices what I call conventions. Conventions are not written down in any constitution. Conventions are accumulated part of cultural cognition that also guide governance. So if Zuma saw himself as a king, as a Zulu king, that's a convention. Or in Nigeria, they were not calling Obasanjo president, they were calling Baba. I mean, by calling him Baba, that's a convention. And today, many people don't call me professor, they just call me Baba Falola. That's a convention. You call it a label, but it opens up a library of behavior, of characteristics. A governor in Nigeria once stole a lot of money. They don't steal small money, by the way. And when they went after him, they saw some of the money in the state house. And he was very angry. And he posed the question, how can you call me a thief? Government money in government house? That's not stolen. And he wasn't making a joke. He wasn't making a joke. He was just saying, how can you call me a governor of a state and at the same time call me a thief? In the 18th century, I doubt you will call a king a thief. What would drive you to that kind of characterization? And that aspect of convention, we also have to pay attention to it. To what extent individuals in power, when you look at their personality, their governance methodologies, to what extent are they drawing from aspects of culture? In one of my speeches in this room, which became very well quoted, I use the concept of polygamy to characterize the current South African government in terms of partnership of political parties. And I devolved to that polygamic concept because it explains what is going on. That polygamy will produce its own conflict, and sometimes it will produce its own happiness. But you cannot have that polygamy and not have the conflicts that go with it. Governance is not only the administration of government institutions, but the process by which power is exercised in the management of economic and social resources for development. But suppose development is not on the agenda of the state, because we tend to assume, rightly so, that development must be on the agenda of the state. Suppose some other things are on the agenda of the state. That is not necessarily the correlation of resources for development. Historically, we have seen so many examples of that, even dating back to the Roman Empire. In this sense, the dilemma confronting us is not only a political problem. That is what we emphasize in the classroom. But it's not just a political problem. We have to talk more about the moral crisis and about the epistemological imperative. Let me repeat that just talking about this issue as a political problem is not enough, because we have to see it also as a moral crisis and also an epistemological issue. And our renewal, and in this very same venue, this same building, there have been so many conversations on renewal. Thabo Mbeki used to address us once a year in the past. I was able to attend some of his presentation. And the focus on Renaissance, on Africa rising, renewal, a package of renewal issues, which to me will require a comprehensive overall. And in this comprehensive overall, I want to use my limited time to speak to 6 pillars. 6 pillars. I will start with epistemic freedom. For those of you who have been with us for over 10 years, when we started with T. Mali, before we changed it to Thabo Mbeki School, notice that our focus was on that epistemic freedom. That was our main focus. And we are developing ideas on political thoughts. I joined my colleagues to develop a variety of syllabi teaching political thoughts. One of them, who was here yesterday, now the Dean of Law School, was able to accumulate my essays, the syllabi, into a book, which he wrote about me. I will return to that epistemic freedom. Ethical leadership. Cultural grounding. Institutional accountability. Pan-African collaboration. And citizen-centered government. On the citizen-centered government, we've introduced a course as part of this school on citizenship, because we talk less on citizenship. And we should begin to frame the question differently from the social contract we focus upon. That how do we also re-engineer issues around citizenship? Because it's key. Because sometimes we only focus on those in power and we don't talk about the citizens themselves. I argue that these pillars allow us to reimagine leadership beyond the old colonial institutions and towards a model that can respond to the challenges of the present. That's my argument. And in the sections that follow, I will look at these pillars separately. They are not necessarily distinct from each other, but because the depth of the crisis we face should be appreciated by looking at its different dimensions before bringing them back together into one argument. Let me be frank. An argument that regards Africa as a whole, undifferentiated, is also problematic. That's what we do in the classroom because we don't have the time. We're talking about 54 countries with different colonial experiences, resource endowments, pre-colonial traditions, post-colonial trajectories. It cannot just be one governance story. My colleague on the board told me yesterday that there's an ongoing election in Zambia and people are not fighting. At the same time, there's an ongoing campaign in Nigeria and people must fight. And this fight is bitter, is intense. And if you are not careful, it can lead to downfall. So let us, on the one hand, homogenize, and on the other hand, particularize, so that we don't flatten the variables and work with variables as if they apply to all countries. What we can defend across this diversity is a common structural predicament that many of the states can relate to, because they are all designed for extraction rather than self-government. And the original design for extraction is true for many of them. So we have to do the work of converting inherited colonial machinery into something that could serve our own citizens with varying degrees of success. These 6 pillars that I'm presenting are common analytical categories. You can differentiate them, and you can also map the dilemmas in different ways. And the common examples we tend to use: South Africa, Ghana, Botswana, Kenya, Rwanda, Nigeria. We tend to use them to illustrate general dynamics, not to suggest that one country's path can simply be copied by another. Let me start with epistemic freedom and the reclamation of African agency. For those of you who have studied the colonial era and its transition to the present, please notice the following: that the institutional framework and the intellectual ideas that the colonial governments imposed were alien. Here is what they did. They took power from the chiefs with indigenous knowledge systems, with ideas of governance and ideas of sovereignty. Bypass those and put their own institutions on top of that. That is the first substantial starting point, because these long-established institutions since the Pharaonic times have worked. They have worked, and they have produced successful organic formations, which historians have spoken about. Whether you talk about political institutions, mechanisms of acquiring power, civic engagements, they've worked out these intellectual projects, and then they became subordinated. Our rescue operation in that regard is not enough. We cannot reproduce them, and there's no point to do that, or we can highlight the ideas that they bring to us. I went to Ghana, and I recently created a new field called African Ancestral Studies, bringing out these old ideas. I'm releasing a major book on that. It's been very well received in terms of how the ideas created by our ancestors will empower us with an epistemic freedom. And my appeal today is that combine ancestral intelligence with artificial intelligence. It's a combination. We're not going to reject artificial intelligence, but we should not also reject ancestral intelligence. But that in this epistemic freedom, we've lost so many knowledges, from those unwritten down, and my colleagues and I will develop syllabus on indigenous political thought on this campus many years ago. Those that were produced in the process of encounters, ideas that Walter Rodney and others have been cited, Ali Mazrui, all of our previous scholars. We have a colleague on this campus who became famous, Sabelo. I did an entire book on Sabelo. He was your colleague on this campus, and he joined us in some of these debates. And we have to rescue these epistemic examples. My colleague on the board at dinner yesterday was referring to the ideas in Futajalon of the concept of the state and liberty as of the same time that they were talking about that in the United States. And if you study Yoruba people, its monarchy preceded that of the European monarchy in several ways. It's been a privilege of mine to have suggested a Department of African Kingship Studies, which a university has accepted. We cannot lose those organic formations. But extending that organic formations further, remember, after the Second World War, when the Europeans were packing their luggage, it was an extraordinary development. Here's what they did. In the late 19th century, they took power from the chiefs, and after the Second World War, they did not return the power back to the people they took it from. That's a problem. What did they do? They gave the power to the new elite that they manufactured and created through Western institutions. And that disconnect remains with us. In giving that power to a new elite that they have created, they took us in a direction of an epistemic crisis. And in that epistemic crisis, we begin to face the challenges of relating our foundations to our present, the challenges of development models in all aspects, the challenges of institutional choice in all aspects. And some of them, as they remain unresolvable. Whether it's in Afghanistan or Pakistan or anywhere in Africa, modernity has produced anger. It's an age of anger. Everybody is angry. The citizens they are very angry. Whether it's in Liberia or Nigeria, the majority of our youth, they've checked out of the continent. And we use bad analogies, so bad, that if you bring a slave ship to Lagos and you tell people you will chain them down and beat them, they will enter the ship. They will enter the ship. And part of what we need to do is that as we review this epistemic freedom, we also have to connect it to the subjects of ethics, to the subjects of values, that political restructuring by itself is not enough. That political restructuring must be grounded in new ways of thinking that will revive. And my colleague here used the concept of repair in addressing those who attended the master class. And in that short address, she said this subject of repair has been a long one. It's not new. And it's a permanent state of repair. That repair, the way she's gesturing and explaining it, is part of what I call epistemic freedom. And we require it of leadership who are acting within global context, within global diplomatic systems and global economic system. And we require it to negotiate with agencies, International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank. And we also require it in terms of how we challenge leadership, creating different pathways of evaluation, and talking about linking policies to a wide range of intellectual decolonization. And on this project of decolonization, we have to give enormous credit to President Thabo Mbeki. I think there's a consensus on that. To those of us who have followed him and have read what he's saying. The second pillar is that of ethical leadership as a foundation of public trust. We have to confess that this is a bigger challenge. It's a bigger challenge. Don't let us worry about how we define this ethical leadership, because our citizens understand it. They understand it in terms of the corruption they see. They understand it in terms of bad behaviors. They can relate to issues of accountability and issues of transparency. The question we have to pose, years and time fighting for democracy, when are we going to begin to fight for transparency? Because it's a bigger fight. And when are we going to begin to fight for accountability? It's a bigger fight. And I'm reminded of that memoir. If you have not read it, please go and read it, by the first president of Kenya, Jomo Kenyatta. He wrote it under Malinowski, and he called it Facing Mount Kenya. At his time, people of his age, they combined two intellectual traditions. The traditions of Western knowledge, but they never forget the traditions of indigenous knowledge. If you've read Things Fall Apart, you see that combination. If you've read Ambiguous Adventure, if you've read Shoyinka, you will see the fusion of both. In Facing Mount Kenya, there's a powerful allegory that Kenyatta put into it. And he set up this allegory in the forest. And the way he structured it is that Fox convinced all the animals in the jungle, why can't we live like human beings and build houses like them so that rain will not be punishing us and will not be suffering from the heat of the sun? And they said, okay, you go ahead. And he built a house. I'm not embellishing the story. I'm not adding to the story. I'm just reporting the story. And Fox called a housewarming party. Housewarming party. And at the end of this housewarming party, a bigger animal of the same family of the cat said, Fox, on the count of 3, I want you to leave this house. Otherwise, I am going to eat you. 1, 2, and Fox ran away. Angry but determined, he built a second house, and the tiger took it from him. And he built a third one as big as this room. Enough for the elephant to enter. He knew what they were going to do, and he made a plan, as Kenyatta reports. And before the party was over, Fox set the house on fire. And all of them died. And the way Kenyatta was trying to use that allegory is that if you don't create ethical choices, you are going to end up in violence. That's what he's trying to do with that story. That ultimately, if you grant politics in theft, in cheating, in exploiting other people, the game will be over. But the game will not be over the way you imagine it. It will be over in terms of violence. And those of us at my age and my 70s, we want change. But we keep warning, don't let this change come via violence. Because it's going to be very difficult to control the process. We have had leaders various times in our history, various countries who have addressed this issue of ethics. And we have had theoreticians as well who have addressed them. Mamdani used to serve on this board with me, and we spoke to this issue several times, and he was a professor here, like me, talking about some of these issues. What will happen if you treat your citizens as subjects? And what will happen if you create what I characterize as a dual state, in which you have a state functioning on the basis of constitutions, but you sabotage the state by creating ethical violations? I don't want to bore you with examples because your own library is very rich with these examples. Very, very. So you have, in that dual state, leadership who are supposed to work within the structure of governance also sabotage it in terms of alliances with contractors, alliances with foreign corporations, alliances with foreign banks, and you have where there are serious insecurity issues that insiders within the state, in creating their own dual state, also participate in that insecurity issue. Let me give you just one example. And I will take the example from the highest quarter of the Nigerian government. It's on WhatsApp. If you want the story, I can send it to you. It's an advisor to the government, highly placed. And they kidnapped his sister's son. And he said, how can you kidnap somebody at that high level of government? How do you get near him? And he complained to the president, went to all the ministers. They said they are doing something about it. No. Eventually, you know, in Nigerian kidnapping business, they will kidnap your cell phone. It's from your cell phone that they will determine your financial capacity. They look at the contacts you have. They knew he's an advisor to the president. So they said, you have to give us a staggering amount, close to 200 million. It's staggering. That's a lot of money. When they wanted to deliver the money, they missed the road. And they went back and saw military officers. And it was the military officers who said, this is how to get there. These are the officers of the state telling them how to get to the kidnappers. And in that sorry state, the former president of Nigeria, Jonathan, said, even within his own office, within the palace, there are people who work with those kidnappers and bandits. And you remember South Africa was implicated when they stole a lot of money to go and buy hams in Johannesburg. And I call that a dual state. Dual state is not uncommon, in which legitimate state and institutions will create yet another state within it for the purposes of meeting their own personal needs. That's an issue of ethics, an issue of money. And if there were time to give more examples, you will see how Nigeria is rich in earth minerals. Very rich. But it's been privatized. Chinese companies, in collaboration with emirs, former military generals, they mine those resources, the lithium, all of them, and move them on their own terms. Nigeria just woke up to discover that there's a ship on the ice sea with a pipe of over a mile long to lift oil and move it to the ship. You can't do that outside the concept of a dual state, because your navy is involved, the army is involved, and the police is involved. We have to solve the problem of this dual state. And it's necessary to emphasize these ethical issues, that it's legitimate to blame colonial structures and institutions for many of these, but it's also legitimate to look inward and also blame ourselves. The thief and the recipient of the goods is also a thief. What about cultural grounding and the legitimacy of governance? We should be proud of our culture is changing, but we cannot ignore it. We cannot build our institutions on imitations. It's not going to work. We can't say our institutions must be Western, our practices must be Western. That's a product of imitation. And we're just wasting our time. Wasting our time. And if you look at everything we do, we sabotage ourselves, whether it's in the dress system, in the food system, in the language system. We sabotage ourselves through a process of imitation. If we are looking at areas where we do well, excellently well, that area of cultural grounding and creativity is one of the very best. We are doing well in terms of demographics. It's actually the best demographic in the world. If you are from Japan, you are selling diapers more to older people like me than to babies. Because there's a declining population. Many countries declining population. Even the big China is declining population. Our population is growing well. So we have that demographic advantage. We have one of the best diaspora advantages. It's one of the best. African Union created the diaspora as a sixth region. But we have to tap into their capacities in terms of passports, in terms of creating investment capacities, in terms of investment capacities. But we have the abundance of skills and creativity by younger people. But they can network, cross-connect. How we have to tap into that connection is something we all have to meet, and the AU has met about it and talk more about it. Today, given internet facilities, virtual facilities, in the knowledge economy, we can tap into it. I recently created Toyin Falola Masterclass. And each time we meet, we get no less than 10,000 students that join us on YouTube, They just join us. And we have to advance that capacity into areas of technology, environment. But we have to, and the third frontier is that frontier of culture and creativity. I was talking with Stephen Moapi of this university yesterday, and we were talking about Afrobeats. And he was explaining, he was telling me how UNISA went to Tanzania, and all what they were playing is Afrobeats. It's the same thing in Uganda. It's the same thing in Nairobi. It's the same thing in a pub in Johannesburg. That Afrobeats from small rooms and small telephone in Lagos has become global. When Nigeria rebased its economy some years ago, it overtook South Africa. It's falling back now again. And what it did was to combine incomes from Nollywood and Afrobeats. And it grew bigger. And you have a superstar, many superstars based in Africa, in South Africa. When Jerusalem was released, it became one of the best successful music in the world. Bugalolo by Kiss Daniel, these are unmatchable. And the same thing in the areas of culture. That this culture, generating its philosophy, we must merge it with governing systems. It's about recognizing sustainable systems that resonate with our people was a part of government structures. You can't just say, I'm throwing away what people under 30 and 20 have created. You can't throw them away. These are the intensity of your creative capacities. And you have to figure them. You have to figure out how to match them into your governance system. And there are so many examples. I'm releasing this paper to you, so I've authorized them to release the paper. That we have to do, and I'm glad that they are doing it, the coexistence of customary and religious authority with official machinery. A student here is writing a PhD thesis for me on indigenous South African customary laws. And it's done 4 chapters, excellent work. And how do we create capacities of customary courts, chieftains institutions, religious tribunals, and use them. When I was in school in the 70s, that's a long time ago, and we were asked to read Max Weber. And part of his conversation was on informal institutions of governance. But that informal institutions of governance have developed. If I ask some people in this room, how many units of governance exist in Africa? You will not be able to answer it. Because the unit of governance you tend to focus on is that of the state itself. But it's far more than that. Your family is a unit of governance. I used to joke that I can't just divorce my wife without taking permission of my sisters. How is that going to happen? Or without talking to parents, how is that going to happen? That's a unit of governance. If you are a Pentecostal, your pastor is so powerful. Some of you are married in this room, and you often wonder why your pastor is far more powerful than you as your husband. because your wife respects the pastor more than you. I have friends in South Africa who used to go to Nigeria to see J.B. Joshua. You're from Malawi, from Zambia. Your guru is in Lagos. from his cell phone, he can contact you end of December. I want you to fast till February. The president, Ramaphosa, does not have that power. He doesn't have that power. He can ask you to go and fast for 2 months. You won't listen. They can just tell you and you begin to panic if you don't follow the instruction. And that informal power is granted in cultures, in those units of governance that are outside of Western framework. And it's something we have to take very seriously. And we have African scholars who have also spoken to that, like our colleague at WITS, Achille Mbembe. And we have to also relate this cultural grounding to the education system. When we review what we teach and how we teach them, you and I must say, what are the cultural components that we are living out? Because it's that cultural component that will allow us to question Western derivatives. That's where our questioning methodology will be derived. Institutional accountability and the durability of the state. That is the other pillar that I identified. I will leave a lot of time for dialogue, not just questions directed at me, but for comments. And what I'm skipping that issue of accountability is so key and is so important. To what extent can we allow those who control the state to keep stealing our collective resources? It has become a scandal. It's a very, very big scandal. If we don't solve this problem, you and I will be consumed. Pan-Africanism is not dead, contrary to what people think. And we have to rescue it in terms of Pan-African cooperation. We tend to focus on state-to-state relations like ECOWAS, like African Union. But what we tend to forget is that people-to-people cooperation is very elaborate. For those of us who study migration, we want people that by focusing on just the movements to the West, we don't analyze internal movements. There are so many. There are so many within the regions. If you stay on the highway in Kenya, you're going to see lorries carrying corn from all their neighbors. Every day on the road. If you live in West Africa, up on Nigeria to Gambia, you're going to see movements of people. If you've tracked this, the old network created by Mali Empire in the 13th century has been revived just before our own very eyes. People they just don't use the highways, the roads by the state. They've revived alternative roads. I can travel between Nigeria and Ghana without passing through the highway. You don't have to pass through the highway. That route from one village to another, one village, they remain. So we live out of our experiences, of our documentation, of our writings, these people-to-people engagements. If you go to Abidjan, you are going to find a large Yoruba population. I'm Yoruba. There are so many there. They have their own schools. If you go to Accra, the market called Makola was created by Yoruba people. If you go to Niger, the amala that Edith ate yesterday for dinner in Johannesburg, they have it in Niamey. It's there. The wife of the president of Niger is from Nigeria. The current president of Ghana speaks Yoruba as good as myself. He lived in Nigeria. His grandmother is Yoruba. He's a Yoruba chief. So these people to people, we have to begin to study them. I'm not saying stop studying state to state. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying let us add to this topic, people to people. Begin to notice the number of Ugandans and Eritreans in the Gulf states. There are many. When conflict broke out in the Sudan, that's how the data came that thousands of people are living from Nigeria living in the Sudan. When you talk about the Darfur crisis, its origin is people from West Africa going to Mecca through the east-west route, not through the trans-Saharan. Moving up, they moved sideways. They were stranded in Darfur. On the way back, they ran out of money. They were stranded in Darfur. And they created large ethnic communities, still there till today. When Boutros Ghali was fired by the US as Secretary General, and he was looking for a new initiative, he set up the Afro-Arab Summit. And I was privileged to be a member. And as they gave us the data, we began to realize that within the area you call Middle East, North Africa, and the Horn of Africa, 2 million people circulate every year. 2 million people. It's as big as that. That circulation leading to ideas of Pan-Africanism, the ideas of collaboration, we have to work on it more carefully because the good they deliver is far more than the complaints we make. And these goods they deliver lie in terms of strengthening collaboration, and they lie in terms of intergroup relations, the flow of peace, the flow of continental peace. You don't fight with your in-laws. And the more people intermarry, the better for us. Let me begin to close this conversation. I'm not reading the lecture, by the way, I'm speaking to it. That there are many pillars. You cannot do everything in one lecture. That when we combine these pillars, we'll see the contradictions, and these contradictions are many. We have religions, but there is no God. We have land, but food is not enough. We have languages, but we don't speak to one another. We have democracy, no governance. We have teachers, no knowledge. Students, no jobs. And you can begin to bring out these contradictions in various ways of your choice. Our people make a distinction, so many distinctions. The Yoruba have a proverb. The wise person can never rest. It's only the fool who rests. Because nobody goes to the fool for advice. What do you want to do with his advice? He's a fool. But if you are wise and you have knowledge, they won't let you sleep. And our people say, if you have a choice between being clever and being wise, choose the option of being wise. Because the way the clever person thinks is that he can always get into trouble, but his brain will tell him how to get out of the trouble. And the wise person will say, I don't have to think about how to get out of trouble because I won't get into trouble in the first instance. These organic ways of thinking, they have to be restored. And our colleagues here, and we have to be grateful to them, contribute significantly to African indigenous knowledge system. In fact, if you are looking for one of the most dominant contributions of our colleagues, we have to thank them for creating and adding to our knowledge on African indigenous system. For those of you who know little about the continent, let me do a commercial. I have two forthcoming books, one by Routledge, Africa's Contributions to the World. It is enormous. It is tremendous. It will be released next year. That there is no aspect of civilization that we have not contributed to. Years ago, in this same building, I spoke to COVID. And I could see one or two people who were at that lecture. Living in Texas, I became worried about the intellectual framing of resistance to COVID. I was so worried. In fact, I sent a personal note to Mr. Mbeki that what are they saying? That we don't know about distancing. We don't know about distancing, social distancing. We don't know about quarantine. I kept listening to this. We don't know about vaccination. I was listening. And rushing back to me was this indigenous knowledge. How can you say Africans don't know about quarantine? That's how we've been solving a wide range of mental issues, of leprosy. How can you say we don't know about social distancing? I was born at the age of smallpox. That's how we are curing it. I studied palaces. I studied them. Because once you have a mental illness, you cannot inherit this tool. So they have to solve the problem. And they did. And how can you say we don't know about vaccination? If I remove my shirt, you are going to see many vaccinations. But we call it incisions. We use incisions to deliver medication to the blood. That's what you call vaccination. How do we kill the big lion and the elephant? We didn't do the European way. We put poison on the head of the arrow. And once you can shoot and it reaches, the poison will deliver your work. If you're Zulu, I don't have to tell you this. So many of what they think we don't know, we actually know. And we know effectively. But in knowing this effectively, let me warn you about intellectual appropriation, because we don't pay attention to that. I teach a class on knowledge empires, how ideas had evolved in various places. And Africa had been part of that knowledge empire since the beginning of humanity. We're part of a knowledge empire. We develop mental facts that created the artifacts. Early agriculture, early forms of technologies and engineering. There is no example you can come up with that you cannot find the African origins in them. And we just don't need to apologize All we need to say is that why should we lose this knowledge? Why should we lose them? Epistemic independence will give us that intellectual courage to tap, to build the knowledge we can rescue into government system. And as we do this epistemic freedom, we are going to acquire tremendous confidence that will let us talk about ethical leadership and rebuild trust. And the resulting institutions will validate the cultural basis of power. So that is not negotiable. My conclusion may be a little bit demanding, but let me do this as a form of provocation. I know we are grappling with a number of issues, but we have to see this more as challenges. The alternative is to treat governance reform as a luxury. It's not a luxury. To be postponed, we cannot postpone it. To look for more urgent problems that will add to existing problems. You are not going to solve today's problems just by thinking about yesterday. You also have to think about tomorrow and fuse the three together. And as we fuse them together, let me leave you with the takeaway. At the end of every lecture, there is always a gossip. Somebody will ask you, what did you learn? And in every lecture I take, I give them the talking points. The talking points that in this lecture, I say we should view epistemic freedom as a pragmatic rather than rhetorical project. Reform the curricular and language policy. I gave a keynote address same time last year on language in this building and develop independent in-house capacity for policy analysis in finance, central bank, and regulatory bodies. Second, we must institutionalize ethical leadership everywhere, all institutions, schools and churches, anti-corruption agencies, judiciaries. Third, cultural mourning in reforms, not nostalgia. I'm not pleading for nostalgia. We should embrace customary and religious institutions to the extent that they meet our modern challenges. We should build institutional accountability to at last individual leaders in practice, not just in paper. Enforce term limits, protect press freedom, and protect civic spaces. We must encourage Pan-African organizations for autonomous enforcement mandates. And we must integrate public engagement from the start of policy creation to digital civic spaces. I am not telling you ideas you are not aware. They may not be novel in themselves, but I'm advocating them as you have done in your various capacities to create national reform. Some countries will need national dialogue to do this conversation. That our diagnosis has not been the problem. We can diagnose. That has never been our problem. But sometimes we lack the political will to do some of what we recommend. And in this political will, we cannot delegate reforms and policies only to political leaders. You and I are part of the project. Thank you very much. I set 100 questions for you. I don't know the ones you'll be setting for me. Please.
Thank you very much, Prof. That was a master class, isn't it?
Without certificate.
Without certificate, unfortunately. But if they want certificates, we have opened for enrollment at the TM school. Yeah. Colleagues, I think you have heard that when it comes to church, where the power lies, no wonder recently, in build-up to the elections, we see our politicians going to the church as a center of power. But colleagues, I'm not going to waste time. You have been taking notes. I've been observing you. One of the key things Prof raises is that things are not as new as we may think they are. And he started by making that point, that new issues are not necessarily new, and we must not think that we have got a deficit of issues, and spoke about the family capture, among other things, family corruption. And key to what I'm taking away from Prof's engagement today are the 6 pillars that can form a theoretical lens which we can use to understand our epistemic and ontological challenges in the continent. The epistemic freedom, ethical leadership, cultural grounding, institutional legitimacy and accountability, citizen-centered government, and understanding also, as we get frustrated with political leadership, the duality of the state in the continent, that we must not be preoccupied alone with the political leadership that are in the echelons of the state as we know them, the constitutions and the institutions Prof spoke about. But that there's also a duality to the state. That we may be occupied with removing leaders from power. We're talking about this with Prof Govoki earlier on. Elections. We get preoccupied with elections and then we get frustrated. Why are people not showing up during the elections? Why is the voter turnout going down? Without appreciating the totality of the makeup of our state. And Prof spoke about that, the duality of the makeup of our state. I'm not going to labor much, Prof. We have really learned, Prof. And the last one I'm taking away is that there is no aspect of civilization we have not contributed to. We have made tremendous contributions to all forms of civilizations. That's my takeaway, colleagues. Prof Mzuyanda, can you come and facilitate questions and answers? I'll be stepping away. Colleagues, there's no transfer of power. We share power. There's power sharing. So I'm now going to give over to Prof Mzuyanda Christian to lead in terms of the questions and the discussions that we would want to have, that we would want to engage with Prof Toyin Falola. And please don't forget the online, Prof. Prof, over to you. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much, Program Director. As introduced, my name is Mzuyanda Christian, and I'm standing on the protocol that has been observed. Prof, thank you so much for feeding us the breakfast, power breakfast, on this topical issue. We really appreciate your words and your delivery. For me, the takeaway is that we should always emphasize on ethical leadership, colleagues. Whether we're talking about the institutions that you are currently based at, or even at home, we should always ask ourselves, are we really ethical leaders? And that's part of the 6 pillars that Prof talked about. We also make a mistake in terms of understanding leadership and think that it's only leadership in the political space. No, we are talking about leadership in its entirety. Think about the global financial crisis that we had in 2008. Part of the problem was the business leaders that contributed to that. We also have issues around the political space. As you have seen, people around March and March were leaderless. It's because of the failure of leadership. We wouldn't have Madlanga Commission today if we had political leaders that are ethical. Without wasting any time, let me quickly take questions. The protocol is that you introduce yourself and shoot straight to the question. Please try to shorten your questions. There might be a lot of people that want to engage. It's a dialogue, colleagues, but let's try to be respectful and engage. Thank you so much. Can I firstly get 5 hands from the house to get some few hands. I see 1 hand there. Second, third. Can we get 2 more? 4th. There is 1 in the back. Okay. Yeah, in that order, colleagues, please. Where is the mic? Oh, you just press. Okay, thank you so much.
No, good afternoon, and thank you very much, Prof, for this wonderful lecture. I've got just 2 questions. I'm going to be short like the program director has requested. The first one is that you raised a very quite important factor or concept of citizen-centered government, which resonate very well with Aspiration 6 of the African Union Agenda 2063. Now, I want to ask you a question based on that. Do you think that African Union is doing something tangible to realize that particular aspiration of making sure that the Africa's development is driven by its people? The last one, it is with regard to an African credit agency that was recently established. What do you think should be done to ensure that this credit agency established by African Union does not fall in the same trap of African Union structures that are using new liberal lenses to diagnose our problems? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you, Program Director. Thank you, Prof. Falola, for your wisdom. We really appreciate it. My name is Dr. Mashood Mbeki, and also a student doing a second PhD on intelligence and security studies. My question is, 1, do you think that Africa has a leadership deficiency? And 2, in terms of, you spoke about youth having checked out of Africa. Now, in terms of youth, how then do we address youth bulge in terms of creating employment and make sure that they don't move out or they don't move to different countries? For instance, you've got someone with a PhD in South Africa driving an Uber. Thank you.
Thanks, Prof. My name is Buikuto Mfusi, a researcher at the TM School. Prof, in your presentation, there are 3 issues that you spoke about that caught my attention: ethical leadership, Pan-African collaboration, and citizens-led government. So my question is regarding the ongoing tensions of migration in the country, with African countries, for an example, Nigeria, criticizing the citizens that are leading the marches, as well as the government in general. So my question, Prof, is what is your view on that, mainly looking at the point you made about the promotion of citizens-led government? Thank you.
Thank you. Number 4.
Thank you very much, Professor Falola, and I would also like to thank the TM School officials for hosting these seminars. They are really important as they enrich the public discourse. But I want to ask, how should governance in the African continent adapt to 21st century challenges such as artificial intelligence, youth unemployment, climate change, and migration? Because many young people are now leaving the continent to countries in Europe and North America looking for opportunity. Like, how can we adapt to that? Thank you.
The last one at the back. There was a hand there. Are you already captured? Withdrawn. Steve, was it you? Okay, I think you can answer, Prof. We don't have online platform, it's only YouTube, so we will take another hands after this round.
So whenever you give any lecture, the feedback and your assessment of that lecture is dependent on the questions they ask. So from the questions, this has been a successful lecture. The lizard jumps from a tall building, very tall. And sometimes it jumps from the long Iroko tree. As soon as the lizard lands, it nods. The lizard keeps nodding. And it says, if nobody sees my achievement in that jump, I will congratulate myself. So I'm now nodding like the lizard. You cannot talk to somebody of my age without listening to proverbs and allegories. That's the way we are trained to talk. The questions anticipate some of what you will say when they give you the papers for those who ask. Because I even wrote a conceptual paper for this talk that I've anticipated many of them. And you know, questions can also take generational form, in which when you address younger people, the way they pose the questions will be different from the way people of my age also pose the question. Because as we are looking at death, younger people are looking at life. And as they look at life, they have to see themselves in the imaginaries of the nation. They don't have a choice. But in these imaginaries, let me challenge the younger folks. And let me start with South Africa. There was a pastor here who went to some members of his congregation, I'm talking about this country, and asked them to be eating grass. You know what they did? They were eating the grass. Now, if you are a fiction writer, I write short stories. I cannot make that up. It will never occur to me to formulate a character that will ask human beings to become goats. I'm eating grass. It will not occur to a fiction writer. Maybe you saw it in your dream, but you ask yourself, people will not believe this story. But they did. To go to Nigeria, can you imagine somebody bringing your sister for ritual murder, your own sister, or your mom, to make money? Do you know they do that? Don't ask me whether the ritual works, but they did it. Or can you imagine on a university campus that your menstrual pad, you have to burn them because if you put it in the trash can, people are looking for it for medicine. So, as we address this topic, we also have to look at the post-colonial imaginaries of people in their 20s. That given the difficulties of making a living and given aspirational behavior in which young people are dreaming of wealth, they also do things that are post-colonial degradation. And we have to speak to this as well. That the challenges of their modernity is also producing dysfunctionality. Whereas you see people of my generation talking about values and values, you also have people in their 20s saying, look, let us forget these values. What I want to say next, I am not making it up. There are people they call Yahoo boys, 419. I don't know what you call them in South Africa. Is that what you call them? 419. That's a Nigerian code. Okay. So, mothers of 419 kids called a meeting. It wasn't a joke, and I attended it. I was there. I reported it in the media. That they were saying they have nothing wrong with their kids doing 419. I'm buying them cars and building houses for them. And we can't just throw away data like this because it violates the theoretical premise of ethical governance. You know, when I was in school, in elementary school, we had a class on hygiene. They would say, when you go to the toilet, when you leave the toilet, you must wash your hands. That's theory. In practice, there was no washing basin, and there was no water. So we're in that situation with that ethical issues that we can talk in class, we can do all of this. And as the third, I'm responding to the third person because it's a challenging question. It's very challenging. That as we speak about it, we must also study the conditionalities that sabotage it. Now, and I tell people, as bad as in some countries the leadership is, those who are going to follow will be worse. Because there will come a time when you are recruiting from the 419 pool. That's where you'll be recruiting the leaders from. Because as this 419 pool expands, so too will be where you are recruiting them. And this is going to be extremely bad if we recruit from that pool. I'm afraid it's something we have to worry about. We also have to worry about citizen ongoing tensions. I will frame it in a variety of ways. One, as I tell people in Nigeria, all the problems that Nigerians have as a country, they are not created by people from South Africa. They are not created by people from Ghana. It is not people from South Africa who ask Nigerian politicians to steal money. And problems that they have in South Africa may not be created by people from Uganda. So that's one level. The second level is when you create layers of problems, when you remove one layer, what is going to follow may be terrible. Because, for instance, if you frame the problem as they frame it in the Middle East, as the Israelis frame it with Palestinians, you enter into a situation in which problems are not resolvable. If Nigerians say everybody from South Africa or Ghana should leave, then what follows is internal cannibalism. That's what is going to follow. You begin to cannibalize yourself and you solidify tribalism. Because vacuum will not allow you to be problem-free. It's not going to happen. You can't wake up and say, my country will not have problems. God will not answer your prayer. Because by its very nature, a state generates problems. Resources are inadequate. I don't know, I've studied the contents of prayers, and I wrote a book on it. I call it Sacred Words. And I tell my Christian colleagues, when you say there's nothing God cannot do, I don't doubt that. But my response is, God will not do many things. There's nothing he cannot do, yes. But that does not mean he's going to do it. It doesn't mean that. And because of that gap, the middle is what we struggle to have. Because what tensions do is to add to existing problems and complicate them. At the same time, complicating analysis. When you are young and you keep saying, my dad is not rich and my mom doesn't take good care of me, the day you now get a job, that is the day you realize the challenges they have been facing without telling you. And that's how I'm going to address those tensions. Citizens and values are connected. We cannot disentangle them. It's very, very difficult to disentangle. And if you read literary work, whether they're poems or prose or short stories, they're concentrated in this dimension. They're concentrated in it. But what is adding to that complication is around issues of aspirations. Go back to the contents of traditional prayers, birth ceremonies, and study funeral prayers, which I've done using South Africa. You will see how they frame the limitations in human society. When you are born, what are they praying for? What are they praying? What is the content of the prayer? And when they are doing the final funeral rites, study the prayer very much, in which over the years societies have framed possibilities. To frame possibilities. You are not going to see any mother who carries a baby and say, my baby, you are going to be a thief. There is no such mother. And at the death, you are not going to see a pastor praying that when you get to heaven, may you go to hell. And those prayers, they show us our collective aspirations as people. But we now violate them. I enjoy Afrobeats, not from the lyrics, because they are so aspirational. I wrote a piece in praise of ganja. Shall you, they pray, smoke more, drink more. And when they make the money, how they spend it on women, on girls, on beautification, but they tell us about contemporary aspirations among the youth and our citizens. I'm trying to set you up in terms of reshaping some of the ways in which you think and relating this to this question. I've answered many of them in my own little ways. What is the AU going to do about credit, about other things? Well, when I gave the Africa Day lecture, it was on AU and the projects. And there's one good news from Pretoria that South Africa is occupying the leadership to digitize the archival papers of the OAU. So we have to be very grateful for that, because a university like this can now produce many PhDs and researchers on these papers. But its limitations are well known in terms of the credit agency that you speak to. The governance of the future. There's no escape from technology, no escape from digital. But there's data colonialism. There's data colonialism. Contrary to what people think, AI is not going to level the playing field. It may even widen it further. You understand? And let me illustrate just with one example. In the 19th century, colonial conquest, you could see those who conquered you. You fought them. Shaka Zulu fought them. You understand? He saw them. You've set up a new university named under Plagé. You could read his papers. Now, the contemporary imperialism, you are not going to see the forces you are fighting. You won't see them. They're not like the Boer or the British. They're not going to take that form. They are invisible forces. You see, they are invisible, powerful, in financial control, Bitcoin, the movement of goods. The University of Free State has an agency that calculates the money that leaves Africa every year. It's 8 billion. You are not going to see the paperwork. So we have to be very, very active in this digital technology. We have to be extremely active. The young men and women in this room, you are going to know how to use AI within its ethical framework. Telling people not to use AI anymore is a waste of time. They're not going to listen. So let us now begin to say, okay, this is the way we can use it to advance our collective project, to advance the transformation of the continent, to use it as a tool for self-empowerment, and to derive from it the capacity to incubate projects. And I've told universities, you have to convert yourself to incubation centers. Then let us figure out what young men and women know. Let's cumulate them. University of Pretoria can give you a diploma on patenting. Let's say, okay, people in their 20s and 30s, what do you know? And let's see how we can create partnership with the industries. I know that there is age in the wisdom of the elders, but there's also inventions in the capacities of youth that we have to match them together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof, for the responses. Can we give Prof another round of applause? Yes. Colleagues, you look so sad and angry at the same time. Are you angry at your leaders? You have a right. Let's continue to express that angerness through our writings, through our collaborations, as well as through our social media platforms. At TM School, we have your Facebook, we have your Instagram, as well as LinkedIn. So these discussions will definitely continue. Online, I'm told that we are only on YouTube, so there is no need for us to check questions there. Can we take the last two questions, guys, because of time, colleagues? There's two. Okay, we'll take two here and then the two from the online platform, and then we close. We start with you, and then at the... There's no online. Okay. Okay, let's take two from the house, and then we close the session, colleagues. There's one here and the other at the back. Thank you. Oh, a third one. Okay. On that order.
Thank you. Am I audible now?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm very loud. Okay. Thank you very much. Prof, you did mention earlier that you have met with various heads of state and people in the government within the continent. I just want to ask, if it's answerable, do our leaders, the ones we saw called the president and ministers, do they, when they meet, AU meetings, SADC, ECOWAS, other regions, do they ever say like, hey man, you are really screwing up your country? You know, can you at least address it a little bit so that, you know, we also don't have problems this side, kind of thing? Because when we hear them on the, whether online or wherever, they are talking very nicely. But when they meet, does Botswana get to say, hey, Zim, things are bad, you know? Or Nigeria get to say, Kenya, see what's happening? Do they ever have those conversations among themselves? Because like recently, our president here, he was in Zimbabwe, and they were saying he met with one of the people who was on the delegation. Apparently they say he's on the run. He's after the South African law enforcement are looking for him. So those kind of engagement, then we then to question as to when they meet and there's someone who is, you know, being looked after by, on this country's law enforcement watch list, what kind of conversation do they have given the regional issues that we are facing? So that's my central question. Thank you.
Okay. Second one.
Oh, hi. I just want to add or follow up to the same question. I think from your lecture, Prof, you mentioned in terms of after democracy, we have struggled. I don't know whether, what is the struggle for us to fight transparency and accountability? And then you add on about, in terms of the will, is it the will or the implementation or fragmentation of such examples that are cropping up?
All right. The last one, Prof. Mkize.
No, colleagues, I'm covered by the two colleagues. Thank you.
Okay. Before we let Prof answer, can we read the online?
Sure, will do. The two comments question online. This username is quite difficult. It's like a password, so I won't attempt to say who it is. Thanks, it's a comment. Thanks for the great speech, Prof. Do we really have hope for a better tomorrow? In Nigeria, for example, we keep deteriorating by the day. Our politics continue to deliver poverty and insecurity for the people. Seems like a comment. Yeah. And then there's a question from Bridget. On institutional capacity and accountability, how can governments institutionalize feedback mechanisms so that accountability is driven not only by internal controls, but also by public participation?
All right, thank you. You can respond, Prof.
Thank you. So, I think leaders of virtually all countries in the world, they know what their citizens are complaining about. I think they know. His Excellency is here, he can contribute to that. They know. Now, there's a difference between knowledge and transformation. And there's a difference between knowledge and the capacity for transformation. I was in the car with a professor in Pretoria, and we were talking, and he said, leaders from other countries come to South Africa and they see the roads and they say, when will their country be like this? They talk like that. And even from their written speeches, you can see, I think the president of Nigeria or Ghana, they know all the problems. They know. It's like saying if a family head does not know the problems of his family, he knows. So, we can generate knowledge. We can generate bad knowledge. We can generate useless knowledge. You understand? That's one side of the story. And then, how do you implement stories? In my private life, I joke a lot. You can't be with me and not laugh because I make jokes a lot. Suppose I have a very big stomach, huge, as a member of the Association of African Pregnant Men. Do you know I don't see my stomach? When I look at the mirror, I see it. Do you know I don't know that if I go to the gym, the stomach can reduce? I know that. But what does this knowledge mean to me when I say cold lager, beckoning at me to drink? So, call that self-destruction. Some people argue that you and I are agents of self-destruction, that we destroy ourselves. But it does not mean that we do not know that we are destroying ourselves. You can also use that analogy to understand the state. When there were electricity crisis in South Africa, you can't tell me that the president doesn't know that they are rationing electricity. Or you can't tell me that the president of Nigeria does not know there is food shortage. They know. They know. And the advisors also tell them, and they give them newspaper clips to read. And the constraints are there. But fundamentally, we shift questions when we talk. Fundamentally, states are governed by interests, not just by knowledge, in which whoever is in power consciously he identifies the interests that he wants to satisfy. You understand? You think the lion does not know that eating grass is better than eating fellow animals? But once you work with those interests, it now begins to shape your government. Who put you into power? Whom are you using state resources to satisfy? Who can remove you from power? And once you shift the conversation to interest, all those forms of knowledge about your people, they begin to collapse. I've never seen any human being, a professor, who is not against poverty. I've never come across one. None. They were against it. They want poverty elimination. Let's call them liberals. Give them any name. I've never seen one who told me in private, you know, I want poor people to remain poor. I've never seen one. So, what kind of knowledge are you receiving, and what is your interest? The interest that you are defending. And when you throw in a person like Mr. Trump, you had other variables of racism. You understand? You cannot have a committee of armed robbers and you make the policeman the chairman. It's not going to work. And that is the problem we face. Once you produce a leader who thinks in tribal ways and racist ways, anti-gender ways, that shapes policies. Even when you go to the person and say, don't talk like this, it has no meaning. Because that is the way he will govern. So I appreciate that question. And I appreciate the question, how do we institutionalize accountability? But there's no choice. Either we fight for it, or the process fights for it. Now, I think years ago, Edith may remember, or Vusi, I was asked a question on this campus about corruption. And I said, okay, can we privatize corruption? Assuming that we cannot do anything about it, can we privatize it? Because it has become so democratic. And that democracy of corruption will defeat you and I. It's going to destroy you and I. Many countries lack the absorptive capacity to cope with corruption. How can Burundi cope with corruption? Where is the money? How can Mali cope with the corruption? Where is the money? Some countries can absorb it and still pay salaries. But not all countries have that absorptive capacity for corruption. And we have to do something about it. Now, you can make the argument that you cannot eliminate corruption anywhere in the world. That's a valid argument. But where do you locate that corruption is very key. So the US follows a model of corporate corruption. Do you want to steal money? First of all, go and establish a business. You understand? And then you can over-invoice. You can sell hamburger to the military for $150 per piece. That's corporate model. Or we follow a bureaucratic model of corruption in which that very access to power, the participation in governance, civil service, allow you to tap into it. Those leakages are too many. And I think we can work to block some of those leakages. Is there hope for a better tomorrow? Don't ask somebody of my age about hope. Because the only thing we know how to do is to feed you with hope. That is the only diet we can feed you. There is nobody of my age who will say there is no hope. Nobody will tell you that. You understand? So let us forget about that. Because the only thing we know, and the only thing we are programmed to do, have grandkids, have kids. I can't take hope away from anyone. And I don't think anybody should take hope from anyone in his 20s. Discuss the challenges and discuss the way out. But denying people of hope, I don't think it can work. And I'm just appealing to all of you. Don't accept any formulation that says your future is hopeless. Your future is not hopeless. It is the way we imagine this future that is your responsibility as well as my own responsibility. Thank you very much for this conversation.
Thank you so much, Prof. Can we give him another round of applause?
Let me teach you new ways of clapping. You are clapping in traditional way. So we start with this. You clap little, and then as I do this, you clap more and more. Do you want to practice or you understand?
We want to practice.
You want to practice? Clap little. Oh, that's too loud. Little. More. More. Now you understand it. Now let's start. Ladies and gentlemen, let's clap for Falola. That's too much. Go ahead.
Let's start again. Oh.
Not one, not the number. Is it loudness?
Okay.
As if we are changing the volume.
Hey. Thank you so much, colleagues. Thank you so much. Okay. Thank you so much, colleagues, and thank you so much for being the wonderful audience. Prof. Edith, can you please come forward for... I think so, yes. Thank you so much.
Colleagues, we have seen that Prof has got many talents. We can do a comedy show that is intellectual. He can conduct an orchestra, and he can also deliver a very instructive intellectual engagement. And thanks, Prof. Christian, for facilitating the engagement between Prof and our colleagues here, for facilitating the dialogue. Now I'm going to call Prof. Mello. My protocol is being, it's not me, the facilitator. I'm a good graduate of protocol. Yeah. Prof. Mello, Prof. Falola, we have a token of appreciation, and Prof. Mello will do so. And Prof. Edith as well, the leadership of our school, will deliver a token of appreciation.
I don't want a pen.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want a notebook. I don't want a cup. Because I already have many of them. Don't give me what I already have.
Yeah. That's the interest, Prof, that you're talking about.
Don't give me what I already have.
All right. Thank you very much, Prof. Lekaba. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Yesterday we were talking about protocol. Now I see they flipping the protocol around. But what we're going to do now, and they got certificates, so maybe we should take them back. Now what we're going to do now is to give a token of appreciation. We're not going to say what it is,
I will tell them.
because already he's telling us what not to give him. I'll ask the Dean to give our distinguished guest and presenter a token of appreciation.
I will lick the gift later on, but let me teach you how to clap. Again, not the first one. You didn't get that one very well. So clap once, just once. Clap twice. Clap 3 times. We clap 4 times for the professor who delivered the master class. You didn't do well. You didn't do well because there must be a little gap. 1, 2, 3. But this is what you are doing. No, not that way. Let's clap 4 times for the professor. Perfect. 3 times for the dean and all the management. 3 times. 2 times for Dino and all the organizers. Where are they? And 1 time for members of the audience. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Prof. Lekaba, you see, inviting a distinguished guest like Professor Falola, you always have challenges in terms of controlling him. In a way, he was doing what I was supposed to do in terms of thanking you. Let me start with Prof. Lekaba. He's one of the latest addition to the Thabo Mbeki African School of Public and International Affairs. He is hardly 2 months within the school, but he's already doing a great job in terms of chairing sessions as well as writing papers. The Dean, thank you very much, Prof. Paswana, for the very enlightening opening remarks that you gave. And to Prof. Falola, an international scholar of note. And in fact, I've been trying to establish directly from him, how many books have you written, and what is the average number of books that you are writing per year? He said, I'm not going to tell you because I'll be advertising myself to you. So in a way, he was saying that I must actually go and do research about the number of books that he is publishing. But Prof. Falola was actually chosen carefully to be the chairperson of our International Advisory Board. But in addition to that, as the school, we thought that every year that we have an opportunity to fly him to Pretoria, we must actually maximize his availability, not only to us, but to the extended community of the Thabo Mbeki African School of Public and International Affairs. So we always want to share the wisdom that he has with the South African community as well as the international community. Because if you were to check the number of people who are online, you may be surprised that there are more than what we have in this room. And therefore, he was the most appropriate person to talk about issues of governance as an international African scholar. He's the one who has got the authority to tell us about most of the challenges that we are facing as the African states. Because if you ask Transparency International and say, where do I go in order to find a good example of better governance? Good example of bad governance. They will say, go to Africa. Because some of the worst performing countries in terms of issues of governance are found here in Africa. And in South Africa as well. Look no further. I'm sure you're going to find a lot of examples of bad governance. And therefore, it means that this discussion that we have started today about governance as well as ethics, it is a discussion that needs to continue. It is a discussion that our students who are doing PhDs as well as masters, and for those of you who are still planning to join us next year, it is your opportunity to look into these specific issues and say, what is it that we can do as Africa to turn around our fortunes so that Africa can start shining, so that Africa cannot continue to be an example of bad governance across the globe. I'll also want to thank Prof. Christian. Prof. Christian is also one of our latest addition within the school. He's the man who was the professor who was handling the Q&A. He has also done very well in terms of the few months that he has spent here in terms of research. I can already say that he has already submitted something. So adding to the broader knowledge that we have and that we are trying to create as the Thabo Mbeki African School of Public and International Affairs. To the audience, you, the audience, are actually our friends. You are the extended family of the Thabo Mbeki African School of Public and International Affairs. And we always welcome the inputs that we are making. Some of the questions that you are asking, in fact, to some of our students, this can be easily turned into research questions that need to be investigated. So keep supporting us, keep being with us in terms of our quest to generate knowledge and to make sure that Africa becomes a better place for all. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Prof. Mello, for talking about the new additions. Colleagues, in talking about the new additions Prof. Mello has been talking about, but in the intellectual project, here is a new edition by Prof. Falola. Very thick, very stimulating intellectually. Decolonizing the Future of African Studies is the title of the book. I think you will be able to see it, and then, can you also bring that one as well forward, Prof? The title, I think our colleagues in the online can see it, and we can all see it. You can maybe at this moment take a photo of these books, the titles of the books, so that from here, we are not far from the bookstores. There's one not far from here in Brooklyn. Let's all of us go there and purchase these books. We have heard from Prof. Falola the intellectualism that is there, the depth of knowledge, and if you still want to engage with him further, here is another way of engaging with him. And we're waiting for that 200 and something pages, Prof, input of today. Yeah, please, we'll share it. That will be an addition to this free of charge, thanks to the TM School. So please, colleagues, let's go and buy these books and learn and drink more from the wisdom and knowledge of Prof. Falola. And with that, I want to thank everyone. I want to thank the Dean for the opening remarks. I want to thank Prof. Falola for the engagement. I want to thank Prof. Christian for facilitating questions, and Prof. Mello for closing remarks. And of course, yourselves, colleagues, for being well-managed audience, not striking to make inputs, not elongating your comments, having very clear, concise questions, and all of that, for taking notes, for being attentive to Prof. Falola. I want to thank you very much. Please stay tuned. Friday, we have another seminar on protocol. Those who missed the master class, I don't know if, but you should be on our list. So you should be having the invitation for Friday. Don't miss it. One of the catalytic niche here is the issue of humanism and Bosadi. And we are now entering into understanding how protocol and the role of women in protocol as a process, as a diplomatic process. So Prof is going to deliver that a seminar on Friday. Please come in numbers, recruit more. If it needs be, UNISA has got so many venues. We'll change the venue. And lunch is guaranteed, it will be there. So I think even now there's lunch. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for coming through. Round of applause.